The last time I tried to buy a bottle of gin, I nearly had a nervous breakdown, staring at a literal wall of brands, and I walked out without deciding. They lost the sale, and I nearly lost my mind. I've always loved a good gin and tonic. I was introduced to gin and tonic by a much beloved grandmother in my late teens, and I've never looked back. But honestly, even for a devotee, how many brands of gin, or anything else for that matter, do we need? Whatever happened to the good old days when the choice between a handful of brands kept us all happy? When I first started buying gin in the UK, the options came down to something like Gilbey's or Greenhall's, the most affordable, Gordon's Dry, Beefeater and Plymouth, mid-market standards, and Tanqueray, the statement gin, and the price largely dictated the purchase. In bars and pubs it was often as simple as only a couple of these brands on offer. In the winter time, there was that wonderful seasonal variety, homemade sloe gin, a cosy winter tradition, not a commercial race. It was a red liqueur rather than a gin, and a real treat on a cold day. Spicy and sugary all at the same time, and so warming. But aside from that, the pub choices were simple. Bombay Sapphire joined the gin lineup in the 80s. It was what we would now probably call a disruptor. Bombay Sapphire introduced a lighter, vapour-infused botanical profile, and it was packaged in its groundbreaking, translucent sapphire blue bottle. Roll over Tanqueray, there's a new kid in town. To be honest, I was just as beguiled by the blue bottle as most of my friends, but it was the start of the slippery slope, and here we are. I now live in New Zealand, and there are north of 150 small batch distilleries and craft brands producing gin in every flavour, bottle, colour and shape imaginable, and they're all competing with dozens of major international commercial labels. If you consider the seasonal batches, limited editions, multiple lines favoured by the local craft distilleries, the exact number of distinct New Zealand-made gin bottles or labels scales well into the hundreds, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere else now. Major local craft competitions like the New Zealand Small Batch Gin Awards regularly feature over 100 domestic entries in a single year. Okay, so I don't want to be a party pooper. I get it. People love to explore the different styles and flavours, but where does it end? It's just another example of that most contemporary of concepts, overwhelm. I've homed in on gin, but pick any category you like and it's likely to be the same. We are overwhelmingly spoiled for choice. So David Epstein included this statistic I'm about to read out in an article for Decision Making. In 2006, an economist calculated that the consumer options available to citizens of modern economies exceed those of pre-industrial societies roughly by a factor of 100 million. That is an almost incomprehensible multiplication of choice, and it extends well beyond consumer goods into questions of who to be, how to live, where to work, and whom to love. I think when I read it, I couldn't quite believe it. But when you think about all those gins, you kind of see what I mean. But anyway, I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend my entire life angsting over brand selection for gin or anything else. All this choice and searching for the top value, the yummiest, the coolest, basically the best on any level. There's a name for it. Of course there's a name for it. Chronic maximizing. It's the idea that we can find the best of everything if we search hard and extensively enough. But this comes at a real cost, the cost of our time. And while we search, there's an opportunity cost of what else we could use the time for. Do I want to spend half a day deciding on a gin brand when I could be writing a story like this? I'd rather go without, thanks all the same. You might even say, sling the gin sling. But we can't evaluate every available option. There are just too many. Our minds simply aren't geared to undertake this level of evaluation, especially as we don't have the full information about most of them. AI and cognitive psychology pioneer Herbert Simon, who lived between 1916 and 2001, came up with a wonderful portmanteau word, satisficing, which combines satisfy and suffice. Simon won the 1976 Economics Nobel Prize for his work in this area. In a nutshell, he set forth the merits of considering a limited set of options, choosing one option that's just good enough and getting on with our work or lives. He believed that it was mathematically impossible to fully optimize life outcomes because our brains approximate reality crudely. And as a practicing satisficer himself, his goal was to free up his cognitive bandwidth and emotional energy to more fully enjoy his work and life rather than worrying about missed alternatives. As his eldest daughter, Catherine, described him as an incorrigible satisficer. But Simon lived by a simple 3-step rule for his clothing selection, for example, and he saw this as a way to eliminate decision fatigue on a daily basis. And this was, think about it, this was way before Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg went sartorially minimal. So his 3-set rule was there was 1 set for your body, 1 set in the closet ready to wear, and 1 set in the wash. And his choices within that were simple and functional. He opted for plain white dress shirts or very simple pale coloured sports shirts, dark navy blue or almost black trousers, and 1 black beret at a time, purchased from a specific European haberdashery, which he would wear continuously until it completely wore out, before buying an identical replacement. And then he had 1 brand and colour of socks. Once these decisions were made, he didn't waste precious time on his wardrobe. The problem was already solved, allowing him to focus his best energy and cognitive brilliance on his groundbreaking work. All a bit minimal for me, I have to say. I do love clothing variety, way too much to apply this, but I do like the liberating intent of the approach, and I can see how I could apply it to other aspects of my life. So there's an expression that I love, and it was a favourite of my late business partner. Roughly right is better than precisely irrelevant. He was an engineer, a profession that's all about precision. It was telling that he embraced this mantra, which is a great way of looking at overinvestment of time. Clearly, if you're a brain surgeon or similar, precisely right is precisely right. Anything else is likely to line you up for a world of pain and litigation. But for most of us, it's a good MO. Simon found that the maximizers are often less satisfied with their decisions than the satisficers. It's not that the latter set the bar low, it's more that good enough for me is a better route to happiness than the eternal search for the best or the perfect. In these days of social media, where everything is held up to comparison, influencers hold out the possibility that nirvana surely lies beyond the next swipe. The AI bots are another cog in the maximize or die machine, offering entirely new ways to search, rate, compare, and suck time. But I agree with Simon that good enough is good enough, and I'd change my business partner's expression to roughly right is better than precisely exhausted. I try to apply this thinking by drawing a line in the sand about what that means to me, and then stick to it, so I have time to do the things that matter most. Next time I go looking for gin, I'll just stick with the Bombay Sapphire. Known, loved, and good enough. What's your best example of chronic maximising? Love to hear your comments.